Welcome out to the range on a beautiful day in the middle of summer out in Northwest Oregon. Today is part 3 of our series on the end of the government as you know it. We're going to be talking about the aftermath. So after transition, long term, we're going to be just throwing out a whole bunch of ideas. Before we get there, a woodpecker visited a petrified forest. He found it impeccable. Ba-dum-ba-dum. Okay, welcome back. We have our Paul hat, nod to Paul, our Pop-Tarts. Please watch some of our old videos where we have some of the ads that Paul did, where a man belongs with his Pop-Tarts. And we have over here RTS Tactical IFAC. And I'm wearing the TriStar Trading's latest shirt, which says, "We the people have had enough." Yeah, that's what it says, have had enough. We got links to those things down below. It helps support the channel. I'm sorry for all the ads. I know, Paul never did it. Paul was paid a different way. So we're talking about now the protracted survival, living, whatever you want to call it. Because there's a fine line between living and survival. Remember, part 1 was this first 72 hours of a disaster into the government as we know it. Part 2 was the transition period between then and where we are talking about today and what's happened in our scenario carrying on so we have something to do. The government, as we know it, has ceased to exist. Now, that means there's no highway maintenance being done. There's nobody clearing trees out of the roads except for us, our neighbors, and so on. Okay? That gets us to, hopefully part of your plan for protractedness is knowing who your neighbors are and forming these different groups. That's my personal opinion on how things are going to work. Prepping or preparing is nothing new. We've been doing it for hundreds of years with canning and root cellars and drying meats and so on throughout history. Preparing for winters and so on, right? Nothing new. Most of today's scenarios or videos I see are preparing for whatever that person's scenario is of how everything's going to end. Whether it's a government shutdown, an EMP, it doesn't matter. It's one dimension. We're going to try to give you a multitude of dimensions and not, as one commenter said, a garage sale of paranoid person stuff. Okay? We're going to try to give you a whole bunch of ideas, and I'm going to try to steal and coin the phrase of Leatherman prepared, meaning a Leatherman or any multi-tool, and Leatherman's not a sponsor, I just really like their products. A multi-tool does a lot of jobs okay. It does not do one job exceptionally well. But I can't walk around carrying this all the time so that I have the right tool for every special job. That is ridiculous. I can walk around with a firearms tool. That's what this Leatherman's designed specifically for. And no, this hammer isn't replacing a framing hammer. But it works in an emergency. There's a little saw on it. You get the point. Multi-tools, Leatherman specifically, do a lot of jobs okay. And when you're talking about limited space and limited resources, having a tool that does one thing okay or multiple things okay is better than having that entire toolbox you're trying to move around all the time. Which gets me to some of these things. Now, you're going to chuckle a little bit when I get my fancy, except for not fancy. This sword cost me less than this knife, which is fancy and custom built. Anyway, if you think about, hey, I don't want to waste a round on putting a deer down or shooting a little critter or something, maybe a long pokey sticky is what you need to take care of things like that. Maybe chopping brush out of the way, blackberries, getting to the good blackberries when you're foraging is important. Okay. I have a baton. You're going to think, but I'm not arresting people and I'm not going to go beat people. And it's just like a cop to have a baton. But maybe a stick to hit things with, not people necessarily, but maybe your out of control dog or something else, or get to the blackberries because you don't want to carry a sword around. You can't underestimate another piece of equipment that's not a lethal piece of equipment, because you're not going to take this and start beating the brush back in the blackberries. Yes, I know it's a great big sword. And again, thank you to Dante at Fox Run Forge for building this for me. I think it's beautiful. There you go. Of course, we talked about the hatchet before. All of our equipment needs to do multiple purposes. My hat's a fine example of that. Keeps the rain off me, keeps my head from being sunburned, so on. Some of the commenters said one of the things you need to work on prepping wise is the expendables. Fuel, food, batteries, all the things we're going to use up. Ammunition is an expendable. If we can save a little bit of ammunition by taking care of something with a different tool, it's probably going to be better for us. Especially seeing how, unless, if you think you're moving, trying to carry thousands of rounds with you isn't going to happen. Excuse me, sun or sweat's rolling down my face. A friend of mine lives up in the Coast Range, and he's off the grid. And it snowed like a booger 2 winters ago. It snowed, I want to say, 15 to 20 feet off and on over these 6 weeks. Now, he was prepared, but he wasn't 6 weeks prepared. So by the end of the 6 weeks, he'd gone through the diesel fuel to run his generators that ran his home power plant. If you say, well, he should have had solar panels that were under 20 feet of snow, and he lives in the Coast Range, there isn't that much sun. You can't recharge those very fast with very limited. So those aren't the answer to all answers. They're an answer. Ran out of most of his food, and then was eventually forced to ski out about 8 to 10 miles before he got to a road that didn't have snow on it, and he could get picked up. Yes, he had a shortwave radio, but here's the thing. The government in our area didn't have the right vehicle to come get him. Now, we're not on a mountain, so getting a snowcat that grooms the slopes on and everything on a major mountain wasn't an option. Snowmobiles probably would have gotten in. In fact, I know they would, but that's, you can only carry so much fuel on a snow machine. You weren't taking weeks worth of stuff to him. My point is, that was 6 weeks. He was well prepared. He had everything. He was comfortable, but he was forced to evacuate after those 6 weeks. How long are you set up for? Somebody I know is set up for years worth of food. They have a system to heat their house that is wood fired, that heats up water that runs through their floors, that heats up their house. But of course, you got to go out and get that firewood. How much firewood do you have saved up for if you're a winter in Wisconsin or Alaska or someplace that has winter long time? Have you figured out how much you burn through? Rechargeable batteries. Well, yeah, I got a generator, but that's going to run out. And if you've been any of these places that's had generators, and you have been stuck in a storm of some sort, you know that even 30 gallons of fuel runs out fairly quick. Are you prepared or have the money to go out and dig an outhouse? Because your water isn't running in your house, which means your toilets aren't flushing. Do you have enough plastic bags for your bucket? Are you going to build an outhouse in your backyard? Do you have the equipment to build the outhouse? Do you have a cat or a track hoe? to to dig a huge underground tank for your fuel. And how do you have the pump to get it back out of the ground? All these, if you have unlimited funds, that's great. If you're planning to leave all that stuff, and go somewhere else, that's great. Are you sure you can get to that other place any time of year? Where I want to go is on the other side of the Rockies. I'm not getting there in the winter if nobody's plowing the roads. And as somebody pointed out, you wouldn't survive a day. Well, it's great news for the rest of you, because if I'm done and all my family is incapable, all this stuff is up for grabs. So you can go forage, and there's plenty of boomers out there that are all dead now because somebody said we would be. I personally think I'll live longer in a day. Maybe not. My point is this, folks. Let's go back to the Leatherman prepared. I feel you need to be prepared for a vast array of circumstances throughout the year for where you live. If you're, somebody even commented about Texas, Houston, I think it was. But anyway, a few years ago, massive ice storm wiped out power, and tons of people, not tons of people. There were people that lost their lives because they didn't have power, and Texas wasn't prepared for all that. They didn't think it would happen there. They weren't stocked up with keeping my house warm in the wintertime options. Most of us are not. Yes, we have a gas fireplace. I don't. I've got electricity and generators. But those are only going to go so long. One suggestion for power I would suggest to you is, and I've been thinking about this a little bit over time. First of all, find batteries that aren't going to die, that are good for shelf life. Maybe watch batteries will last a little bit better than your D-size batteries and so on. Find batteries. A lot of the flashlights I buy from Streamlight right now are rechargeable batteries that take your standard cell phone charger, which come in that fancy crank radio that Paul and I have shown. So you got this radio, you crank it up. Yes, it would take forever. But what else are you going to do when you're bored at night? Sit there and crank this thing, charge those back up. That might be a better option. I get that that's a pain in the rump. But storing batteries that are going to go dead over time isn't a real good option either. Test those things out. Start squirreling away a little bit of cash. A lot of people were talking about, Paul has in the past, tradables, right? Booze, cigarettes, but even cigarettes and tobacco don't store indefinitely. Maybe those, if you can get them in those cans, that'll store for 10, 15 years. And maybe people that are desperate won't care how bad or how stale the tobacco is. We could go on, as others have said, ad nauseum about what to prepare and how to prepare. Have you put vitamin C in for your family so you don't get scurvy? I know that sounds silly, but if you live in a place you're not getting fruit shipped up to you, I don't know where you live, but I don't have orange trees in my backyard here. I don't have the vitamin C to get like we normally do. Do you have vitamin C to keep other things away, to stay healthier? Friend I work with, he's got a family member that's type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent. You're talking a very short time there. And they're squirreling away meds. It has to be refrigerated. We were talking the other day about a dedicated generator for that refrigerator. And plenty of fuel, because that to that family is life-saving. Are you in that situation? Currently, I am not. I'm fortunate that way. But I'm sure as hell not packing all this stuff up and going for a hike. Now, let's get back to what this channel is about. Talk about firearms right after this little break. Is the zombie apocalypse part of your end of the government as you know it scenario? Did the sword to his chest fail to work? Bleh. Have you been out practicing shooting zombies in the head? Well, here at the Paul Harrell channel and the Harrell Brothers in Arms training, we believe everybody should be out practicing that.
Brains.
That way, you can be prepared too. Welcome back. I hope you liked that ad. It was fun making it. So let's get into the firearms. We have beaten this subject almost to death. In saying that, we could go on forever about it, on picking the right one and the right barrel length and whatever works for you the best. Remember, one of our categories is a pocket pistol. In this case, a Beretta 21A, 25 auto, and I've got 3 more magazines plus the one in it. So that should get me to a bigger firearm. And it makes a really good backup should this go down, if that's the only thing I got with me at the time. This is a Glock 22 Gen 3, nothing special about it other than it's one I've trusted my life to many times. Load up in 40 Smith & Wesson. And I trust this gun. I like the way this is set up. For me, it works. The disadvantage of wearing a duty belt with stuff on it is it's hard to get to your pockets when you got a ton of stuff. 12 gauge. Most people agree that having a 12 gauge is a really good idea. The disadvantage of the 12 gauge is that this is 35 rounds. It's heavy. This magazine is 30 rounds. It weighs less than this, obviously. Now, the advantage to it is that my 12 gauge isn't going to be particular on the brand of buckshot I'm shooting out of it, or, in that case, the slugs that it's sighted in for. For the most part, once you sight them in, they're good to go no matter what brands you choose. And it doesn't matter if I'm using triple-aught buck or birdshot or double-aught buck, it's going to pattern pretty close the same way and the same place. Contrary to when you're shooting 55 grain full metal jacket versus 62 grain versus 55 grain soft point lead, AR platforms tend to need to be sighted in differently, especially at any distance. Now, we all agree that the AR platform is the rifle to have, and the 5.56 is the caliber to have for anti-personnel purposes especially. Yes, it would take some smaller game. I don't think I want to be out shooting grizzlies or moose or elk or bigger stuff with a 5.56, so you might want to add something to it, but at the right distance, a 12 gauge slug would take care of all those things. It's no secret I'm a fan of a 12 gauge. One of the reasons is that I feel I can put 9 pellets, 9 holes, 33 caliber into something with 1 pull of the trigger versus 9 pulls of the trigger on a 5.56. Let me see if I can demonstrate that on our now already shot up zombie target back here. One shot, 1 pull of the trigger, 9 holes. We're about 7 or 8 yards right now. Now, you can argue the effectiveness at this distance especially, but I think 1 round, 1 pull of the trigger, getting 9 pellets in something, especially at this range, for me, is a better option than 9 pulls of the trigger. Yes, I know there's things that make it shoot faster. With that said, are you going to carry all these at the same time? No. You're going to give this to somebody that can handle it, knows when to use it, how to, etc. You're going to give this to somebody that can carry the weight, but the recoil is negligible comparatively. I wouldn't be giving my 10-year-old a pocket pistol or a full-size pistol maybe. Those are for The adults. And I hate to say it that way, but somebody that's well trained, we know the inherent dangers of handguns and how easily we can point them at ourselves and others. These take a little bit more to do that. So get your family out, get your friends and neighbors, talk about what role you expect from others. Maybe you got somebody that's super good long range shooting that's going to be the guy go hunt for you because he doesn't have to get close to the deer or whatever. Maybe you got somebody that can't see so well, like a certain movie where he was talking about close or far and ended up with a shotgun. Know your strengths and weaknesses of your plan. Make a plan like they always preach about anything. Fire drills, doesn't matter, folks. Make a plan. Make it so it's a fluid type plan. Nothing's locked in necessarily. Make sure you've looked at all the options, fuel, power, length of time those things are going to exist or supply you, what you're going to do when your generator runs out of fuel and your freezers start to warm up. There are minutiae of this long-term situations that most of us can't grasp unless we really sit down and analyze every aspect of our lives. If the only thing you have is your cell phone to navigate with, you better learn how to use a map and compass, because eventually the battery will go dead and you won't have a way to charge it up. Or, depending on your scenario, the satellites won't be there and the services won't be there. Make a realistic plan. Come up with a realistic scenario. Don't forget our Leatherman preparation theory, where be prepared for a lot of different things well, but don't be prepared for one single thing exceptionally and the other things not at all. Take your team out, take your family out, make it fun, train, talk about safety, talk about their role, get experience, so you're always the best prepared for the worst case situations. Since we completed filming on part 3, protracted amount of time in prepping for that, etc., two major things have happened. One, here in the town I live in, and two was a major earthquake off the coast of Russia that sent tsunamis or potential for tsunamis / tidal waves toward the entirety of the west coast of the United States and the Hawaiian Islands. And when that happened, not much happened in my area, at least on the Oregon coast, because the warning came and went. But Hawaii, it was getting closer, and then there was news footage of masses of people trying to get to higher ground. Everybody moved at the same time, clogged up the roads, clogged up all the gas stations. And the point to be taken for our purposes is, going back to part 2, or anytime you plan to move, one, timing is everything. And two, having your fuel tank in your vehicle full so you don't have to go do that is a major thing. Having some cash set aside, a major thing, because if all power goes out, you can't get cash, machines don't work, you know the drill. The other thing that happened was right here in the little town I live in, and that was a crash that involved 3 vehicles into a major sized propane tank at a gas station. 3 vehicles burned up, propane tank caught fire. The authorities in the city, tried to evacuate, and they put out an order for, I want to say it was a 1-mile radius evacuation zone. Go now. Because they were afraid this propane tank was going to blow up. And I had some friends that were in that zone and tried to go now. So in the 10 minutes it took them to get their shoes on their kids' feet and get in the car and get out of the parking lot, gridlock. They couldn't move. Nothing was moving. One of the reasons was that there isn't masses of emergency personnel in the city I live in. So normally the police department has like 4 to 6 people on. What happened was they were all at the fire and directing traffic at the immediate location, and nobody was available to direct traffic and make sure the gridlock didn't happen. So everybody got jammed up. Emergency services or whoever made the evacuation call figured out, oh, great, now we got everybody outside. let's tell them all go back and shelter in place. So about 20 minutes after the initial get out of your house and leave the area now alert, the next one was please return to your house and shelter in place. Again, the point is timing is everything if you think you're going to evacuate, and maybe having a place, sandbags, whatever it is in your house that can allow you to withstand some of that until the masses have left is a better idea than trying to leave with the masses. And this is just a microcosm of how the government put out an order that says get out now, which was a valid order, with no way to support the people to do it. The end of the government as we know it. So if you've sat through all this, thank you very much. I hope you learned something from it, and we'll see you later.